Imagine if Roger Penske decided to just drop Ryan Blaney out of the blue on the eve of the Busch Light Clash. Sound crazy? Well, let me take you to the land down under. Might not sound so fetched. Welcome in. Welcome in, everybody. I'm David Lawrence, and this is another episode of the Scrutineering Room. Today, I want to take you guys to Australia, where lost in the midst of all the Andretti news, the Rolex 24, and Lewis Hamilton's big announcement today. Recording this on February 1st for those watching. There is a interesting story bubbling under the surface, which is going to have a very big effect even here in North America. You NASCAR fans may be familiar with the name Brodie Kostecki. Brodie is a 26-year-old. He is the current champion of the Repco Australian Supercars Championship. Yes, SVG actually raced against Brodie last year for the title. It went down to the season finale in Adelaide, Australia, and Brodie emerged victorious. To put Brodie in NASCAR terms, he is essentially Supercars' version of William Byron or Christopher Bell. He is the next young big thing to come through Supercars. And also, like I said, you might be a little familiar if you're in NASCAR because Brodie actually came over last August and made his NASCAR debut at the Indianapolis Road Course for Richard Childress Racing in the Verizon 200. Based off of what I've been able to scurry off the internet, this is a recent article from Monday or Tuesday according to motorsports.com. This is basically how the situations came about. There is word that Kostecki and his team, Arribas Motorsports, which is one of the top teams in supercar racing, are headed for a split. However, this is not something that just came out of the blue. According to motorsports.com, the team and Brodie have been at odds since August of 2023, even while he was making the Cup debut over here stateside. And now, all of a sudden, things are starting to boil over. There hasn't been nothing officially confirmed by Arribas. That is until within the last 24 hours. It was confirmed Kostecki will not race for the team in the season opener at Bathurst later this month. Forgetting we're now in February, by the way. So this is going to have some very big ramifications, not just for supercars, because in the blink of an eye, supercars potentially could be without their two biggest driving factors for the entire 2024 season because of how late this development's coming about. There are no open seats on the supercars grid, which means Brodie could potentially miss the entire 2024 season. By the way, Arribas is not in the best of shape either. Brodie's teammate at Arribas last year was a gentleman by the name of Will Brown. Very stout in his own right. However, Will has taken the seat vacated by one Shane Van Gisbergen at his team, Red Bull AAA Engineering, which is, and if you're not familiar with Australian Supercars, Red Bull AAA Engineering is the team in Repco Supercar Racing, headed by a gentleman named Roland Dane, who has been in the Australian motorsport scene for decades, and their team manager is probably one of the most renowned drivers in Australian motorsport history, Jamie Whincup. 7 Supercars Series championships, 4 or 5 Bathurst 1000s. Forgive me, I lost count. But this was a team for the ages, and they already have another promising youngster by the name of Brock Feeney, who was teamed up with Van Gisbergen, and those two actually won last year's Bathurst 1000 together. Sorry, I backed that up. Um, not Feeney and Van Gisbergen, but not Feeney and Van Gisbergen won Bathurst together, but Van Gisbergen did win Bathurst with a gentleman by the way name of Richie Stanaway, who you may remember from if you're a sim community, you know him well from iRacing. He also did a little bit of Formula 3 a few years back. But sorry, didn't mean to get too big on the tangent, but that was just to give you an idea of how big and how much of a scope this has become. And right now, Brodie's in a very big predicament right now because at this point, he really kind of doesn't have anything aligned for 2024. And if you were in NASCAR circles, you may have heard word that there was a plan for Brodie to come back and run all 5 Cup road course races, that does include the Streets of Chicago, in a collaboration with his Erebus team and Richard Childress Racing. Richard Childress Racing comes into this because, like we said, he get to give Brodie his Cup debut. However, it wasn't just that one-sided. Back in December, Richard Childress actually flew down to Adelaide to attend the finale of the Australian Supercars Championship. And it looks like he is starting to really build this collaboration with Erebus Motorsports. And also, the sponsor that Brodie had for his Cup debut, Mobile X, was going to be a very big part of that deal. However, they're also pretty big backers with Erebus. So at this point, this is not just a very big ramification, not just for supercars, but for also NASCAR as well, because we probably are about to lose what could have been one of the most entertaining probably promising part-time drivers we've seen come to the sport in a long time. Definitely road course ringer comes to mind when you think of SVG, Brodie, and some of the other drivers that have came through at least to compete on the road course in recent years. So yeah, this has a lot of ramifications, not just for Australian motorsports, but even in a little bit of extent NASCAR in particular. Do I think NASCAR fans really mention it, notice it? Not very much so. However, this is a very, very, very delicate situation, still developing, still ongoing. As a matter of fact, Shane actually commented on this. And he said, and he said it, and I'm not going to go verbatim, but he said along the lines of, "I hate this for Brodie. I was in his shoes a while back, not being able to talk to the press, not being in the best of places with your team is a very tough, awkward, crazy situation to be in." My feeling is, I feel for Brodie. A young talent like this, literally at the top of his game, and now the rug has literally been shafted from under his feet, about on the verge of his title defense in Australia, and now he's on the verge of going from King of the Hill to being in the valley with absolutely nothing for this season. Definitely now I won't say completely unprecedented, but not quite Damon Hill 1996 Williams, because at least we knew in that situation Hill had time and he had the opportunity to go out and get him a ride. This might be unprecedented, if for no other reason, because I don't think I've ever known a champion set to defend his crown in his prime, and maybe not even in his prime, because like I said, Brodie's only at the tender age of 26, just turned 26 right after on the verge of the finale in Adelaide. But to have a champion on the verge of his title defense, ready to defend his title, and literally have everything shafted from underneath him, I think this might be a first in motorsports. Hopefully we don't ever see this again, but my goodness, I will say this. I I hate it for Brodie. Um I For the Supercar Championship, I think this is not a very good time of press, because the last thing you need is arguably your biggest rising star, and not even just rising star, but your biggest star in general. Like I said, this is your series champion that's going to start the season and maybe the entire season on the sidelines. I do hope calmer and cooler heads do prevail. Hopefully, Rebus. Maybe there is a very, very slim chance that Brodie and Rebus can work things out. They'll come back and they'll run the rest of the season. However, I'm not getting much indication that's very likely. But regardless of what happens, I do wish Brodie all the best, and hope that things really do work out in his favor. But with that being said, that's kind of all I have for this episode. Very interesting story. Thought I'd get you guys in on it. If you come across this, let me know. What do you think about this crate? What do you think about it? Like I said, very crazy. And I know we've seen champions switch rides or not return to their team, but not in a manner like this. This, I think, could go in the category of unprecedented. So, what do you guys think? Leave me a comment. Let me know. Yeah, just a little bit of a crazy situation. But with that being said, that's all I got for this episode of the Scrutineering Room. I'm David. Thank you guys